Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyla Hannington, and I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Division Chief with the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's civil and human rights education and enforcement agency. It is my pleasure to serve today as host of Stitching a Loneliness Antidote, a community conversation brought to you in partnership between the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights and the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Today, we are talking about those groups known as Stitch and Bitches, as in places where people gather together to do textile work and talk. Women have been gathering in such groups for hundreds of years to work together, to share concerns and solutions, and to strengthen social networks. Now, in 2025, and what the Atlantic magazine recently termed the antisocial century, such gatherings seem to be particularly important in their rarity. We welcome 5 participants in textile and needlework and conversation today to talk about how community spaces for arts and these groups, whatever you call them, are critical spaces for combating loneliness and why loneliness is such a social justice issue. I'm going to start introducing people. As I introduce them, I'm going to bring them on screen. So in alphabetical order, our 5 guests, who I'm so excited to welcome, are Kate Blattner, who is the owner and founder of 3 Little Birds Sewing Company, a vibrant modern fabric and craft supply store located in the Arts District of Hyattsville, Maryland. For over a decade, 3 Little Birds has been a beloved hub for the maker community in the Washington, D.C. area, offering a carefully curated selection of fabrics and craft supplies. In addition to retail, the store is known for its wide range of sewing and quilting classes, which cater to makers of all skill levels. With a passion for fostering creativity and supporting local artisans, Kate has built a welcoming space where people can learn, create, and connect. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you for having me.
Next up is Tiana Davis, who those of you who watch a lot of programming with the Office of Human Rights may recognize. Tiana first became interested in sewing in her teens, watching hours of videos about upcycling clothes for a refreshed wardrobe without supporting fast fashion. During the pandemic, when everyone started collecting new hobbies, Tiana decided to dust off her mom's handy and Still in the Box singer and subscribe to Sew It Academy. 5 years on, Tiana enjoys sewing in her free time and has become a regular pattern tester for green style patterns. Need to talk more about that. She has a very loose, informal sewing club with her group of friends that she is looking to turn into a general crafting group in an effort to build a stable community. Welcome, Tiana. It's great to have you. Audrey Lau, who also may be familiar for those of you who watch a lot of programs with our office in the library. After completing her PhD in American history, Audrey Lau wanted a new creative and intellectual challenge, stumbling upon a 19th century Amish cross-stitch bookmark pattern at a gift shop following a tour of President James Buchanan's home. Audrey realized she could combine her love of history with a newfound love of painting with thread. During the pandemic, Audrey found the online world of FlossTube and discovered the concept of craftivism, activism using crafts in a world of people trying to modernize, diversify, and complicate the narrative of crafts often associated with rich white women. As the adult and senior services specialist for PGCMLS, Audrey encourages library staff to create and cultivate communities of stitchers, fiber artists, knitters, crocheters, craftivists, needleworkers, sewers, revolutionaries, and anyone seeking to try something new in libraries throughout Prince George's County. Welcome, Audrey. It's great to have you here in this capacity. Corrina Sowden. My gosh, I'm so sorry, Corrina. Corrina Sowden. When Corrina was 8 years old, her great-grand taught her how to knit along with many life lessons. While taking an arts and crafts class in high school, she rediscovered knitting. Corrina worked at a fabric store for a year, but since then, knitting and more recently, embroidery have been fun hobbies. Her friends and family have been gifted many knitted scarves and other things, which I know firsthand about from having seen some of them. So we're looking forward to talking about that. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. And our last guest today is Maria Vivar Guzman. Wanting to keep her Mexican heritage alive, Maria's mother taught her to embroider around the age of 10, and she continued to learn other needlecraft as she got older. Crochet and embroidery became her main needlework outlets. During and after the pandemic, many decided to learn a new needlework skill or even just resume forgotten projects from the past, which was the reason that Maria created Needlework Social at the Hyattsville Branch Library. So many friendships and communities have started with needlework projects, and needlework projects continue to be a major connection to her family and culture. Welcome, all of you. Well, without further ado, we want to get right into the conversation today. And so I said in my opening remarks, we're talking about loneliness and like why these spaces matter. And so I guess by way of introduction, I'll say a few years ago, I approached the town where I live about starting a Stitch and Bitch, which we called a yarn and darn. And because I thought it would get me out of my house at least once a week and that I'd meet new people there. To its credit, the town said, yeah, let's do it. And yarn and darn continues robustly, even though I don't necessarily attend. So using that story as a lead in, I wanted to hear from you about the spaces that you're in that do the work of creating community space and connection. And really just whoever wants to start us off, I'd love to hear from you.
I'll start because I met Kyla through the Yarn and Darn that she started, and it's been wonderful to have a regular group of people I see and meet new people and see different types of creativity, because there's like rug hooking and embroidery and knitting and crocheting. Someone was making a quilt of their mother's clothing, so we got to share stories and talk about the community. It's just a wonderful event that I look forward to going to.
Can I ask you what inspired you to start? Like you saw an ad, or what made you think I should join this group?
I was like still in lockdown from COVID. I was like, I need to get out. And so like November, I decided I was going to go. And then finally January, I was like, all right, I need to stop making excuses and just show up. And then everyone was so welcoming. Yeah. So it was like a small, easy, close to my house way to see people and not have to like, it's helpful to have something in common already versus friends with where you don't know what you have in common. And yeah.
Right, so it's like a safe way to get conversation because you can talk about like what are you working on. It's like an easy entree.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to jump in?
I can go. I just, for me, it started before the pandemic, but like really kind of came into its own during the pandemic. I got finished with the project I was on and I didn't have any ideas. And so I Googled and found floss tube. And I was like, what is this? And I watched like 4 or 5 of them. And I saw that there were like 5,000 followers. And that I started looking at needlework shops and things like that. And it was really amazing, like the number of people during the pandemic who were looking for a way to express like their dissatisfaction about what was going on. And, you know, Black Lives Matter on Quaker patterns. Like it was really cool, but it was a way to me to like, because I always associate it with my mom and my grandma and everything like that, but I was seeing color and I can't describe how much all that color meant while we were all locked down, and just having colorful thread and being able to do something with that. It was just, and my therapist thought it was the greatest idea ever. Something to kind of deal with the anxiety and being by yourself, and then just kind of getting out there slowly and saying, hi, I'm new. Like, how do we do this? How do you do a French knot? Like that kind of thing. And just kind of went from there.
Anyone else?
I can go. Very similar. I am actually very grateful that my mom taught me embroidery, crochet, and knitting, though I crochet more than I knit. But at least for Needlework Social, which I haven't gotten the chance to go in a while, it started off as simply that Hyattsville Library was getting ready to reopen after getting demolished and being rebuilt. And we had a lot of community members that they were coming in with their kids, but we didn't really have a lot of programs for our adults. And we did have a lot of senior aged community members who weren't sure how to kind of just come back out and to socialize, which is why I kind of did needlework social, because we had quite a few folks who were more cross stitchers and not knitters or crocheters, which usually the clubs can be kind of overwhelmed with. It was more of kind of opening up a space for folks who do more than just knit or crochet.
Mhm.
But it's been a really great space for everyone to kind of come in, and we've had different ages. But it's been mostly for a lot of the adults in the community who are kind of just like, we still have some who are still kind of joining in and stepping outside of their comfort zones after the pandemic as well.
Mhm, mhm. Kate, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I have been like sewing and creating my whole life, and I did it a lot when my oldest, who's now 19, was little. His dad ended up getting cancer when he was about like 2 or 3. And so I spent an enormous amount of time like sewing and crafting in my free time as just a way to like get through all of that. And, it can be a very isolating hobby when you're doing it because it's just you creating something. And so there was nothing, we're talking about 15 years ago, nothing really that I could go or do or see. And there was nothing like modern that I liked, like none of the fabrics I really liked, none of like the kits I really liked. So I had like a harebrained idea of like, let me open a fabric store, like a crazy person would say. And spoiler, it happened. So I did that. And part of the goal in opening it for me was kind of creating a community for myself, creating a community for other people that could also find comfort in creating or just meeting other people. And like now I always joke, like, this is the only way I make adult friends. Like if they come into the shop and like I'm teaching them or we're like hanging out and we're like vibing and I'm like, oh, now we're friends for life because this is the only way. But I've also witnessed other people, take classes together and make friends. Or we have a really vibrant makers night on Wednesdays night, and there's 30 to 40 people here every Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Are either like knitting, crocheting, embroidery, like a whole gamut of things. And they all like, we're not all of them, but a lot of them were not friends prior to coming here. And now this is something that they look forward to every week, and they check in on each other and they do things outside of the store. And so it's been a really like wonderful thing to watch this like community grow together.
Yeah, I can definitely follow up with what Kate was saying because Three Little Birds has been something that's helped me sort of try to find my community, which is in flux. As Kyla said in my intro, I have like a loose group of friends who do various forms of um, embroidery and sewing, and we try to meet once a month, or we say we're going to meet once a month. It has turned into like a biannual thing, and we're trying to get it back together, but life is life. But like what Kate was saying about there not being really anything modern as it relates to sewing in the area. Like the first community I sort of found was, I forgot what they're called, but I think they're based in Clinton. It's like a sewing group, but I think they mostly do quilting, not really apparel. And they're all, a little bit older than me. And so when I found Three Little Birds, because there's another fabric store, G Street Fabrics, but it's further away. Three Little Birds is right in Hyattsville. It's very bright. It's like right in the center of Hyattsville, so it's walkable. It's like it's in the Arts District, right? Or it's like at least adjacent to that. So it's just very energetic in the area. And then you go in and everyone's friendly and everyone sort of looks like you, just age wise, like not necessarily. Um, you know, racially. It's very diverse racially, but everyone is just sort of young. And then the sewing patterns that are available, they're a little more modern. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Tiana, because am I correct? And again, from your bio, that you found your mom's sewing machine still in the box, which makes me think that you didn't necessarily grow up with your mom sewing like where you were like looking over her shoulder. Is that correct? So
Yeah.
you had no sewing experience.
Yeah, zero sewing experience.
Okay, so how did you decide I'm just going to take this on?
So it started with YouTube videos when I was in like high school. I used to watch and I would send the videos to my friends and, oh, I'm going to do this. And they were like, yeah, okay, Tiana. And I never did do it. But then a little before COVID, I was at my aunt's house and she was showing us her sewing room. Like she had gotten into sewing, I think maybe 2 years before COVID hit. And her room looked amazing. She had this big cutting table, which now I have, and she had like different tables that had different uses, and she had 3 different machines, and I didn't know what they were. They looked far fancier than what my mom had at the time. She had special scissors, and she was like, oh, you're not allowed to touch these scissors. These are only for fabric. And then she had like these teeny tiny scissors that are just for cutting thread. She had all of these fabrics, which were really pretty. And I was like, oh, you have to teach me. And she was like, oh, I'm not going to teach you. You can learn yourself. And so she showed me Sew It Academy, which is like an online sewing thing. It'll take you step by step through sewing. And you start with like a small project. I think the first one was an eyeglass case. And then the second one is like a little tote bag that you make out of canvas. But they're very like accessible first projects to really get you into it. Yeah, and then from there I was hooked because I didn't really have anything else to do during COVID. So, and I wasn't going anywhere, so I was saving a lot of money so I could spend it all on fabric. And I'll say that's a big misconception. I think I went into sewing thinking, I'd make my entire wardrobe and I'd save a ton of money, but like all of my money goes into sewing now. The patterns, the fabric, yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like
the nice thing about cross stitch, it was like cheap, like the thread is cheap, the aid is cheap, like you can get into it, but the problem is then you want more. So yeah. That's when you start creating your haul, with all, the patterns and everything. And yeah.
Yeah. I relate to that because I got into rug hooking, which is a very old, well, not very old, but maybe 1700s from Maritimes of Canada, what's now Canada, and people come in, and when they didn't have any money, so these were like very, very poor people, and they would take burlap sacks and then their old clothes that had become just completely unwearable, and they would cut their old clothes into strips and use the burlap to make rugs, right? So they could stay warm and put the rugs down. And so that sounds like something that would not be expensive. Well, I guess you have to use burlap sacks from potatoes in your old clothes. You should not be buying new things, which is what Kyla did. So I relate to that it can sometimes you can have exponentially expensive things, but what I was going to say is it sounds like for a lot of you, COVID was an instigator. And then Kate, you talked about getting through something traumatic, like finding a way to go through something traumatic. And Audrey, you mentioned specifically talking about this work as a way to express dissatisfaction or to protest, to do social, not just social justice work in terms of community or what we talk about in that space, but actually the art that we're creating, protesting along with Black Lives Matter, for example. So can you talk a little bit more about how, and I'd like to hear from all of you about this. If does what you produce, or how does what you produce, is that an act of resistance, if it is for you?
Yeah, I'll just say that I love these books that say, just all kinds of very not appropriate things that I can say right now, but there's a way, it's a way to kind of get your frustration out. There's a lot of LGBTQ plus flags and things that you can find that people have done. And I know right in when a certain someone was elected, I wanted to learn how to knit because I wanted the cat ear hat that the pink cat ear hat that everybody wore, that I didn't know was going to be a thing. And I was like, oh, and then I saw all these people and I was like, whoa, but that act alone was, seeing all these people on Metro and then in that huge crowd. And it wasn't just we're there to, to support, women and everything, but it was also women were also using their crafts to physically like something you can wear. And now whenever I see one of those hats, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Because it's like we all became friends that day. So but the Black Lives Matter, like the combining of like Quaker patterns, like, you know, people in the United States who are known for their anti-war, peace, you know, anti-slavery, like taking that and turning that into a pattern, and just the number of people who responded around the world to that, George Floyd and everything like that. It was really amazing to see. And you really feel like you can produce these things and you can put them on your desk, or, you know, give them as gifts to friends. And it's just a way to feel like you're part of something.
Oh, thank you. Just making space if anyone else wants to. Yeah, Kate.
I was gonna like tag on to the pink hats, because we became a drop-off site for the pink hats, like right before the march. There was a group that put together kind of a website where people could donate the hats, and then people could come pick them up before the march. And because of our proximity to the march, we became a very popular site. And, you know, knitting takes a long, long time. And so we were getting more requests than we could fill in. And so actually the day of, I think it was the day of the inauguration, where we were the first inauguration, where we all tried to ignore that it was happening. We were trying to like actually make the hats out of pink fleece, because that was all that was left. And we ended up having people that were coming in trying to pick up hats, and we didn't have them. And they came from North Carolina, and they stayed and helped us cut and sew and put these together. And they were there just to like, you know, try to get one to wear to the match. And they ended up staying with us for like 4 or 5 hours. There were multiple other people coming in and doing that. We probably sewed about 500 or 600 hats. Like we were sending people, we bought like everything that Joann's had of pink fleece, because I couldn't have predicted to order, you know, 400 bolts of pink fleece. And it was kind of like the first time that our store had experienced that type of community and that big of a level. And it was really just wonderful to watch how somebody, you know, so many people could come together in such a like really hard time and kind of support each other. So yeah, I think it was really cool. But I do have a little bit of PTSD from pink fleece though.
So I don't want to see it
anymore, but I was really happy to be part of that.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, Maria, I know you talked about starting, like, you know, you have this transmission of family and culture through the work and through your relationship with your mom and through the crafts and the art. But you talked also about this, that you created a space for others, right, at the Hyattsville Library. And I think again, like a lot of other people here, that the COVID kind of was a motivator. But can you take a minute and just talk about like maybe some highlights of what that did for you? Because what I'm thinking about, sometimes we can create spaces where like, oh, I think this would be nice for other people in my community, or in that, you know, we should do this for others. But then as the person who also got to be in that space, as we look at this loneliness epidemic, you know, how is it for you to be in that space?
I am very much a creature of habit. So I usually would stick to one particular pattern, because that was at least my safe space. I never really pushed myself, just because, I don't know, I think at some level, there was still part of me where it's just like, oh, I'm going to stick to this because this is what I know. Mm-hmm. But through it, especially, like I said, I'm mostly a crocheter, and knitting for me kind of makes me very nervous, just because kind of fixing the work again makes me a little anxious. But it was interesting because, I mean, for the longest time, even in my friend group, I was the only person who did any kind of needlework. So my friend and now former colleague Yolanda, she runs needlework now, but she was kind of like the other person who ran needlework with me. And she mostly knits. So we kind of helped balance each other and kind of push each other's projects. so like being able to come together with a lot of the other ladies in the neighborhood, in the community, I was able to kind of learn more about knitting and crocheting in general. I'm able to do cables, which for
All
me
right.
is a huge accomplishment for me because it also took me months to figure out. But and it's very easy to just toss a project aside when you're at this moment where I just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not sure exactly how to proceed. And this group kind of helped me to not give into that and kind of just pick up and learn, which is something I'm very grateful for because it's very easy to let fear take over when you're taking on a project that you're not used to. So that's something I've been very grateful for with this group.
That's a great point, that people the people that are around you are encouragers and teachers. And, I was going to say, and I feel like this is going to hurt Kate's heart. So maybe Kate, you want to listen to this part. I was going to say, when I knit, I'm like, oh, look, a hole. That's so great. Or, oh, look, I've made a triangle. I love that for you. And then I just give it to my child and like, here, I made you a blanket. So I just want to propose that you don't have to fix the mistakes. I mean, it's like,
No, and that's something that I also ended up learning. I mean, if it's usually like a drop stitch and I don't notice until much later, I'm just like, it's okay. I can let it go. I do have a bit of OCD. So sometimes I'm just like, I can't help but kind of just like, I need to fix this. But kind of learning to let it go as well is something I learned because I'm pretty type A. And you can't really completely be type A with needlework. It's just you have to kind of like morph yourself with your work at the same time.
Do you all find it, and again, anyone maybe jump in, do you find it calming? Does it calm you down to do, you mentioned being type A and needing to fix mistakes, Maria. So for those people who are watching and maybe haven't found their way to needle or textile work yet, let's speak truthfully. Does it calm you down, or are you like all tight here, feeling mad that you made a mistake, or what does it feel like to do it?
I will say that it is not calming at all. I went into this and I tell people like all the time, I love it. It's so relaxing for me. But in the moment when I'm sewing, it is rough, especially like when I first got into sewing bathing suits. I broke 4 needles. I didn't realize that I was still on my mom's old machine and it was like one of those entry-level singers. So it's like plastic and it really couldn't handle the type of stuff that I was doing on it. But I didn't realize that at the time. Like I jumped ahead. I was like, forget these classes. I'm going to start doing patterns. But I broke 4 needles. The threads kept snapping. I'm scared to mess with the tension. And so that like will affect it. And then if you have a serger, don't get it unthreaded because it's like there are 4 different needles that have to be threaded and it's very complicated, and they give you like a color coordinated picture so that you know how to do it. It still doesn't help. It's very stressful for me. I love sewing, but in the moment I really don't enjoy it. I enjoy it when it's done though. Like the finished product, I'm so proud and I'm very glad that I did it. But I don't know. You guys can tell me.
I have a question for the audience. I need everyone viewing to just type in the chat where you're watching. How many of you needed to breathe into a paper bag as Tiana was describing all of the steps? Because I love the fact that you love it, but I can feel that like as you're talking about the serger, I was like, oh my goodness, this is not for me. This is not for me.
I'm laughing so hard because I'm trying to like, Tiana, don't scare people away. But I think part of it is what it is calming when you know how to do something and when you know the steps ahead. And I think that's true of anything in life, right? Like it's so much easier to enjoy things when you know what to expect. And when you're in the midst of starting something or you're trying to read all the instructions, like that can be so stressful. And like I tell my students all the time, like this should be fun. You guys are like overthinking this. You need to like, if you're type A, you have to be type A. I mean, I can't change that for you. But you have to expect some error and expect that you're going to mess up. And that is part of the process. And that teaches a valuable lesson too, right? To like be okay with error and be okay with things not being perfect all the time. But even me who sews all the time, like there are plenty of times I'm like ready to pull my hair out and like I have a lot of unfinished projects because I was getting frustrated with it. So I think it's part of the process, but I think you're also right. Like, you it's almost like giving birth. Like you forget about all of the bad, and then you have your finished project and you're like, oh, this is so great. Like I should do this again. It's like you're just subjecting yourself to the same crazy over and over again.
Nice.
Yeah, I really like the like what Maria was saying about being able to put things down. I'm definitely a one project person, and like I just started doing 2 projects, one that was kind of more handheld and one that like I have on a frame. So one's a little bit more portable, but lately like the portable one is really tiny, so it's like, okay, I'm just gonna go walk over here to my frame and I'm just gonna pretend you aren't over there. I also hate starting projects, like starting and like getting it in the middle, you know, and making sure like my frame is right, and the linen or the Ada is straight, and it's always cockeyed, and I'm always like sending my mom a picture, but I'm turning it a little bit so it looks straight, but it's really not, and it drives me nuts. It does, but at the same point, it's once it's started and I can just go, it is very relaxing. And that's kind of, I listen to my audiobooks. I mean, I'm a huge, I think all of us probably on some level, it's music or audiobooks or something that you can actually do 2 things at one time. Some people watch TV, like it's like, and I look at my projects now and I'm like, oh, that's when I was reading, you know, that book about Sherman, or, you know, something like that. It's just, but I haven't had the experience of sitting in a group of like a lot of people. I've been like at home on my little screen and kind of in a virtual, but my next step is to go to like a big like thing. But I wanted to go visit the three little birds sewing, but I was like, I don't have a sewing machine right now, so, and I don't have any place for it, and Tiana's like, just go, and I'm like, no.
You can just go. We have sewing machines to use, or you can bring cross stitch. There's a table where people can just sit. You don't have to sew.
Wow. Corrina, yeah.
I'll speak up. I find it relaxing. If it's something new that I'm learning, I try to challenge myself, and every few projects do something new. Then I have to concentrate. But if I can just like watch TV or on the metro, just knit away, it just passes the time, and then I end up with something. It feels like that wasted time is actually productive, even though I'm having fun by knitting.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And Maria, what about you? Are you relaxed? You not so much, right?
For me, I've gotten better with it. I think the only time where the last time I was really frustrated was I learned how to cross stitch, but the kit I had purchased, there was no pattern on it. I had to count, and I was like, oh no. And I'm still working on it. But it literally says this is taking forever. So I am going to kind of just take my time. It's taking forever, but I do end up listening to audiobooks, and even for Needlework Social, a lot of the folks who would come in, it'd be an audiobook or they'd listen to their music, and it's kind of more of like an environmental thing as well.
So thank you so much for all of that. I mean, so we had some comments, and and one of the viewers said that it's so nice to get a realistic perspective. So it's like really the fact, and I think Tiana like really just being like, it's so stressful, and I really love it. I really love it. Reminds me of, I went to the doctor once because I was like running 5Ks and I hurt my knee, and my doctor was like, you can't run anymore. And then he was like, well, unless you love running, in which case you can go once a week. And I was like, no, I hate running, but I love the outcome of like achieving a 5K. So I really relate to what you're talking about. And we do have a question actually from Dr. Stewart. Dr. Stewart's one of our regular viewers. And, and in a previous comment, Dr. Stewart shared that she teaches a life skills class, and that some of the students, they've asked to have more instruction on textiles. So she's seen some of our students have dexterity limitations. Is there anything that can help people that have physical limitations as it involves getting involved in this work?
For us, we actually did have some folks come in, and they just couldn't hold a crochet hook. So for us, what we recommended was finger crocheting with a bulky yarn, because it just gives you more space and more visibility to see what you're doing and kind of just looping it in. And it's very what's the word? It's very repetitive, so you kind of get used to it. So that would be probably, at least from my experience, what we've been able to do in the past, just using a bulkier yarn, and not necessarily like a cream color, something maybe like a bit brighter.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I went from like using hoops and Q snaps to a frame because holding it in my left hand while stitching, I tried to flip. I'm left-handed, I can do both, but it was still the holding that was the problem. And so I bought a frame, and so I can just, it stays tight for me, and I can show it later, but it scrolls. So it doesn't make my work crunched up or anything like that. It's all straight. So it actually has a lot of purposes, but I find that I can stitch faster too, because I can just stitch. I don't have to hold that frame. But there's a lot of, Ada comes in lots of different sizes, and so you don't have to use it doesn't have to be really tiny. There's a woman who I've watched a bunch of her YouTubes on. She did like pillow-sized projects that would normally be maybe like a square, but she did them really big and just used like all the embroidery floss, and she was able to do the same patterns, and they were beautiful. And then we call it stitch worthy, people call it knit worthy, but because it takes so much time, you give it to someone who knows that it took a while to make this.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank you. All right. I'll move on unless one of you else wants to field that, but oh yeah.
I'll say my Aunt Betty had Parkinson's, and her doctor recommended that she continue knitting. And it was just, I would visit her more often and help fix her mistakes so she could continue knitting. And there's so many different ways you can knit, and you can have bigger needles. So it depends on the person, but you can adapt.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. I did want to take a moment. Actually, we actually have a question from a viewer that we got before we even went live. Somebody actually emailed our office, and they had a couple points of concern about this event. And I thought it was really critical. I was so glad the person wrote to me, because I was like, these are things we actually want to talk about during the event. You predicted where we were going. So one of the things I used the term when I did the opening remarks, we have this in our write-up, referring to these social groups by the term stitch and bitch. So just really quickly for viewers, just to give you a little bit of historical context, groups of women gathering together to do textile work, as I said, are like, millennia old of workspaces, shared workspaces, collaboration spaces, and conversation, problem solving spaces. Since World War II, and I'm from Canada, so I want to allow a Commonwealth influence. It may be more common, not in the United States. So I want to allow, it could be a cultural difference as well. But these terms in England, Canada, I've seen it a lot in the United States, all Commonwealth countries for sure. And I think also the United States, for about 85 years, these groups have been called stitch and bitch. So it's a little bit tongue in cheek, right? You're stitching and you're complaining as this group. So the concern that was raised is, A, is this a derogatory term? And B, is it exclusionary? If we associate complaining with women, which I am not saying that I do, let me be very clear, that is not what I'm saying, but if one does, and they hear that term, would they feel that these spaces are not welcome? So it's really just like, how do we feel about the way these groups are talked about, and should we be talking about them in different ways? Are we comfortable? Does anybody want to field that tough one?
Well, when my husband was living in Texas, he was part of his local Stitch and Bitch, and he made friends. Like, I think he joined because one of his friends was going, and he learned how to knit there. So he felt welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have plenty of men and non-binary people that join all the time. And honestly, it's an interesting, thought-provoking question, because I don't know if I would have aligned the thought of women complaining together. Like it's definitely got my wheels spinning a little bit. I mean, I don't think of it as a derogatory thing because I've always kind of been part of these groups and find it to be more or less kind of what we do.
Yeah.
Well, like in a positive sense, I guess.
Yeah. No, I'm glad that as I said, I was really grateful to get it because I was like, hey, this was one of the questions we didn't talk about. Just because I'll just say when I proposed doing a stitch and bitch in my local community, they were like 100%, but what, you can't call it that. And I didn't challenge that person. Like I just said, okay, let's come up with another name, and we call it yarn and darn, and that's great. And it may just because it has to go to print. I'm not sure. But I when I got this question from a viewer who I hope is here today, I hope this person chose to watch with us. It was such a great question because obviously for some people it's a bit sticky. And actually one of our viewers has asked, and I think we've heard this from Corrina and from Kate, if men are involved. And it sounds like at least for the two of you, you're seeing men doing this work. Corrina, your husband does. Kate, you said you've got men. What about Audrey and Maria and Tiana in the spaces you're in? Are you seeing men or non-binary folks engaged?
I'd say, yeah, I think sewing especially is becoming more inviting to men. Even the quality, or not quality, but the type of patterns available for more masculine clothing has gotten better. I think even when I started, the men's patterns were a little costumey. Like, they were for men, but I couldn't really see any men I knew wearing them. Whereas now, first of all, you have so many male or male presenting influencers, like sewing influencers. And some of them have even been signed by Simplicity, who owns the Big Four sewing patterns. So they're now releasing patterns that cater to more masculine styles. And just the styles themselves have gotten better. And as Kate and I have been saying since the beginning of this, just more modern and just more wearable. So yeah, I would say it's been more accessible for men.
In the cross stitch community, there's a lot of men who cross stitch, and one of the more interesting communities is our veterans. A lot of men with PTSD. I've met a few at shops and things who they've brought in these beautiful, and the women that run the shops aren't always as, I watched the woman kind of ignore him, and I was like, look at that eagle. Is that not cool? How long did that take you? But as we started talking, he explained that his therapist had recommended, he had been in Vietnam. And I said, oh, my dad has, my dad is a veteran and everything. I said, and my therapist thinks, cross stitch is great for anxiety and PTSD. And it's one of the things that's, and so it's really just I've been very impressed by a lot of the men though, too, that are in the community because they're doing all, I think, again, it comes down to like, it's becoming more modern to do textiles, and just there are even people in the industry who may not be associated with the projects themselves, but they work in the shops and things like that. So I've really appreciated the diversity of who you're finding in those, but to know that people are finding comfort in that and really community, I think is really great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for needlework, we've actually had a few months after we started, we had an 8-year-old boy who came in because he was immediately crocheting amigurumi. So he was so fast with it. And it was just because of his interest. But we've also had college-aged young men coming in and crocheting as well. And it's it's not as easy to get them in like a conversation. So a lot of like our ladies also try to have like a conversation with him, but he got even shyer. But we've seen a good like mix of young men and older men kind of just attempting it. In graduate school, I see young men also attempting cross stitching, and even now in classes, a lot of the folks are kind of like crocheting during class as a way to focus. So it's been interesting to see how the wide range of folks that have picked it up.
Oh, Yeah, and I was just thinking as you all were talking, sorry, but I was thinking like, I wonder also if there's maybe cultural things too. Like I'm thinking in Nordic countries, like it's so typical to have everybody knitting and knitting sweaters and hats and for years, like not new, this isn't like a new thing, like for, again, a long history of that. And I know my kid's dad who grew up in Canada, like he, as a child, was like knitting his own hats and mittens. And like, that's just what they did as a family. And so I think that these spaces are less gendered than we may think that they are. Is that a fair conclusion? Although Audrey, you were going to say something too.
I was just going to say we all watched the Olympics, but we all really watched the Olympics to see what Tom Daley was doing.
I don't know who Tom Daley is.
Oh, he's the diver from Britain who made a little pouch for his gold medal and like sweaters.
Oh,
and I mean,
I
he
didn't
was
think,
like,
okay, Tom Daley. Okay.
yeah. I mean, it was, I mean, I don't know about other people, but that's what I was watching the Olympics for. So, but yeah.
So so somebody's actually made a comment here that I didn't actually know about this. Apparently there was a copyright issue because a book came out with the title Stitch and Bitch. I didn't even know that actually. Finding out right now. So great. So we Audrey's a librarian. Maybe we can get a link to that book in the chat. I don't even know. Maybe let's find out if it's actually about what we're talking about. And then
It is.
Audrey will put the link in the chat. Okay.
It's kind of like an older, not older book, but maybe in the last like 10, 15 years or so. I think she had started like a popular like online platform and then had a book deal from it.
Oh, wow. Wow. All right. So I just want to talk again about, or maybe focus a little bit more on this question of the loneliness epidemic. And Audrey, I'm sorry to give you something else to do because you are actually a panelist right now. But when you're done with the first assignment, there's an Atlantic article called The Antisocial Century. So first of all, for you viewing, you can Google it, but we'll try and get a link in the chat to this Atlantic article. And so we know that there's a loneliness epidemic. And I want to just kind of hear from you. You've talked about creating groups. You've talked about participating in groups, or whether it's your friend group or something online. That's a group that you've joined, or actually going out in the community and joining these groups. How do you see loneliness as a social justice problem? If you see loneliness as a social justice problem, and it's okay if you don't. But I'd really like to hear from you about, where you come down on that, and then how these groups relate to that or not.
I don't know that loneliness is a social justice problem. It feels like a very first world problem. I think that the things that loneliness can cause can turn into social justice issues. We've seen that with the so-called incels. We've seen that with what are the other rhetoric things that people with podcast mics are saying? Alpha males. And you guys know, you've seen it. I think a lot of that can turn into social justice issues. It can turn into what we're seeing now in DC, in the government, with, this guy wants to get revenge on, I don't even remember what some of these people did to 45, 47, but he's getting his revenge now. And that, well, I don't know if that comes from loneliness, but people who look up to him, I think they see themselves in him, or they hope to. And so, I don't know, that can lead to all sorts of things, I think.
Okay, so we have one not really a social justice problem. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I think I kind of agree with Tiana. Like, I do think that there might be a cause and effect from it, but I don't know if it necessarily is a social justice issue. I mean, I think there are so many things that contribute to loneliness, right? Like we spent a year not going outside and then we spent a year trying to remember how to go back outside,
right.
And and everything is online and all of that. And there's plenty of community building. I mean, through being virtual. So, I don't necessarily see the connection. I think I agree with what she's saying.
I think
go ahead.
Barbara Laval's comment about the crafting group at Laurel. libraries and places like, like your shop and elsewhere, I think we call them third spaces. So there are spaces that, are, and they're rapidly becoming scarce. One of the things that I think is really interesting is that, like what Tiana said, there's that idea of people negative, but we also had a huge suicide epidemic. And, I think a lot of people feel, that loneliness, like they do horrible things to themselves. And it's one of those things that I find that I don't know that I would call it, I think it depends on the context, but I do think that we need to learn how to, we're attached to our phones, we're attached to media. And, one of the things I love about going to some of these, and just stitching with my mom is just that chatter, that back and forth, the time that you get to spend with people and learn more about them, and having pride in what you make, and being able to give it to someone and know that you cared about them. I mean, those are really positive things. I think that that all of this does. But yeah, I kind of agree with Tiana. It can be definitely a negative thing.
Yeah, I think that and maybe another way to reframe it is, excuse me, I'm so sorry, is what are the benefits of community? Maybe if instead of, if we don't want to focus on loneliness, what are the benefits of community? And if we're living in a time where more and more people are more and more disconnected from that wider community of those third spaces, what are the benefits? And again, we don't necessarily have to answer that, but I think it's something for us to think about. And I mean, I certainly think it's critical to have these spaces and, get out of the house. And again, I think as someone who started this one, it was like, well, why did I want to get out of the house? What was driving me to get out of the house? And if I look at that, I think that maybe gives me some of that, like, hey, I want to talk to people other than my spouse or yelling at the TV. I want to get to know my community. And when times are difficult, if you have already built a community, it's so much easier than if you're starting at scratch in a panic trying to find people. I think, like, not to, I think it's a good conversation. I love the fact that, Tiana, I love the fact that you were like, not really. Like, because, I think it gives us this thing to play with. I guess we don't have a lot of time left. So one of the things that I'm hoping that you can all take time to talk about is to our viewers, whoever you are, wherever you are, if they are not yet engaged and they're like, wow, this needlework or sewing, or actually, wait, that's my last question. I realized I need to see some of your art. So can people show some of the stuff? And then maybe as you're showing your stuff, you can answer my question, which is, how can people who are watching, like, how do you take that first step and find one of these groups? We know they're called by many different names. What's something that you want to say to them that's going to get them going to join one of these groups? Again, whether, if not everyone can leave their homes or has that ability right now. So even doing something online, how can someone do that? And show us what you've got. Who wants to go? Audrey, you look like you're ready. You're muted though.
Sorry. All right, here we go. So this is one of the, I don't know if you can see, it's hard to show your stuff.
I'm going to pin you actually just for a second. Okay. So everybody can see that. Oh, it's beautiful.
So this was a kind of a combination, but it's a modern take on a more traditional Quaker. And I love the fact that I can personalize it and everything. But one of the great things is that there's so much personality. You can take a pattern and do with it whatever you want. You can, if you don't like blue, you can make it purple. And what I really like is the fact that, like, I just sent something to the framer, and being able to go in and talk to them about, how it would, the colors and, what it would look like. So I'm, or someone like Kate, who I'm like, I want to finish this into a pillow, but I don't know how to do it. Your inner, there's just so many interconnected ways. I've gone to Maria's stitching group. I mean, it's really opened my world, and we're all nerds together. So it's great.
Thank you very much. Who wants to go next?
Well,
Okay, all right. I'm going to pin you here too. Just give me one moment here. Okay, talk about it.
this is a stocking I'm working on. And I'm changing some of the colors to make it brighter and match the personality of the person I'm giving it to.
Wow.
And here's a hat and a scarf
Oh my
I did
gosh.
use, and the first pom-pom I ever made. So, and as for finding groups, just there's so many in the community. I'm learning about the one at the Hyattsville Library. And yeah, so try to look at the community notes. Thank you.
Thank you. Tiana, can I call on you?
Sure, yeah. We can have to move my chair out of the way. This is a dress that I made actually for the Barbie movie. I wanted to wear it in the
nice.
theaters. I thought it was like silently agreed on that everyone would dress up to go see Barbie. I was the only one dressed up, but it was fine. It's very nice. And then under it, I guess, is another dress that I never finished because I gained weight during the pandemic, so it's no longer my size, and I didn't bother to take new measurements before I started it. Kate's probably going to kill me because the number one rule of sewing is to make a toile first, like a muslin. But I'd say to get started, start small. Find something that looks really easy, something that you can make with like a fat quarter that you will use. So like a glasses case or like a little tote bag you can carry stuff into the beach. You can also find free classes at the library. I know New Carrollton, Oxon Hill, Three Little Birds is great. You can also get patterns at Three Little Birds. So
awesome. So, Maria or Kate, do you have?
Sure. What do I have? So I would always recommend a granny square, just because you can always do one color, but it's kind of very easy to get into when you start learning how to start from the middle and kind of attach all around. I am currently working on a shawl that's going to be Outlander style, if you want to.
Oh, right on.
And it's still a work in progress. It's probably going to take me the rest of the year. But the one thing I keep churning out are these kind of like mug cozies. And these are the cables that kind of like take me forever.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like very intricate. And these will be gifts eventually. But please always start as someone who worked for the public library. The public library will be a best place for you to start because they can also tell you where there's classes nearby, where you live, if they're free, if they're paid, how much. I think that's always a very good place to start when it comes to finding a resource close to you.
All right, thank you. And I just put that up really quick, but all of you are getting really nice comments from viewers. But Dr. Stewart's wondering where she can get mug cozies. So I don't know. Maybe I'll put you two in touch. And then Kate, do you have something?
I do. I have something to show you, but I have to walk outside in front of the building. So
okay,
we're going to take a little tour of the store as we're doing this. But I just wanted to say that I agree. The libraries are amazing to find free classes. And if you're in actual DC, MLK Library has a great maker space where you can rent sewing machines. And so even if a paid option is not for you, you could totally do that. Hopefully you guys can see this, but this is my social justice rage quilt.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. On the outside of our building. So
awesome.
I know that was probably backwards.
No, it was good. It was perfect.
Okay, great. But yeah, that was my recent make, and I have it on the outside of our building. And I think it's a great example of how you can use crafting for social justice.
Yeah, artivism for sure. That's beautiful.
Can I add something really quick, Kyla?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
For us, especially where we are in Hyattsville, please also consider Spanish flyers. That was the biggest pull for us in our community. All of our flyers we did create in Spanish, just because we do have a lot of local communities, immigrants who don't work and are stay-at-home parents. And that is actually how we got a lot of moms to come and find out about the library and the resources that are available to them. These community spots, like Three Little Birds, I mean, it's so pivotal for them to kind of just start to find a way to kind of connect with others, especially when they are in need of resources.
Mhm.
And I love that you make it people feel safe. That's fantastic. To walk in your store and to know that they feel safe is fantastic.
Yeah. And honestly, having things in Spanish, because I'm not a Spanish speaker myself, I would absolutely like love to have support in that, or if you have resources that can enable us to like continue to support our community, I would love to hear that. Like, absolutely.
This has been wonderful. We are out of time. We're actually slightly over time. I'm so sorry. So to all of you watching, all of you guests, thank you so much for staying a little bit over. I'll try to be fast with my closing. We did not have enough time. But thank you all for being with us. Seriously, loneliness, community, women's work, not women's work, spaces for people to get together and build community, talk about issues, come up with solutions for issues. These are critical topics. And the fact that you took time to be with us is awesome. So I want to thank you for your time, but also for the art that you are making and for the social connections that you are building and nurturing in doing so. For those of you watching, social groups are great. So we really encourage you to find your thing. Obviously, this program has been about textile and fabric arts. They're a wonderful way to form and forge connections and do craftivism and artivism. But maybe you're more of a photography person or a painter or a book club goer or a hiking person or a soccer player, or maybe you don't know yet. We encourage you just to get out of the house and try new things in the name of building and enhancing community and, of course, learning cool new things along the way. What you bring to the world matters too. So thank you for all the ways that you, our viewers, interact in the world around you. Please join us again for another one of our programs. On Tuesday, our Lunch and Learn program continues with Vin Wen on his beautiful new memoir, The Migrant Rain Falls in Reverse. And please check out our websites. You can find the Office of Human Rights at civilrights.mypgc.us and the library at pgcmls.info to learn more about all the services that each of our agencies provides to folks all around the region, and also to check out some of our upcoming events. So thank you again to all of the viewers for taking time out of your days to join us, and for our special guests for all that you do. Have a great evening, everyone, and thanks so much.